September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. What comes after is a horrible story that many have heard and lived through, a story of a long and deadly war that saw many lives perish in the battlefield. But in the shadows lives a similar story, a story of bravery, secrecy, and most important of all, heroism. Today, I have decided to tell you a story that I found most captivating and led to me making this video, the story of Noor Inayat Khan. The story of Noor Inayat Khan starts in a monastery called Petrovsky in modern-day Moscow. Noor was born to a Sufi Muslim Indian father and an American mother. On her father's side, she was a direct descendant to Tipu Sultan, who was once the ruler of the kingdom Mysore in southern India. However, her life was not one of luxury, but struggle. On the onset of World War I, her and her family had to move from Moscow, Russia, to Paris, France. During her stay in France, Noor immersed herself in French culture and learned to speak French, which is a language skill that will become very useful to her later in her years. But at the age of just 13, Noor's family was struck by another terrible event, the loss of her father. Unfortunately, Noor's father fell ill to homesickness, and after not visiting his home country, India, for a very long time, during his journey back, he would become sick and later die. The passing of Noor's father meant she had to pick up responsibilities and learn to care for herself and her sibling. And during this time, Noor learned to write and tell stories, which she put to good use after graduating with a degree in child psychology. Noor wrote and published her first book, called The 20 Jakarta Tales, in 1939, just before World War II. Just like World War I, World War II brought even more destruction and agony into the world, and for Noor, it meant her family had to move again. But this time to Great Britain. Britain joined the war after Germany invaded France, an ally of Britain in the shaky 20th century political landscape of Europe. And in Britain, the war effort was already in high gear, with political reforms and nationwide patriotism at an all-time high. Although Noor was greatly influenced by her father's Sufi teachings that greatly emphasized passivity and introspection, she decided that something must be done and joined the war effort. Noor signed up for the newly established Women's Auxiliary Air Force, a branch of the Royal Air Force, as a wireless operator, also known as a radio operator. The Women's Auxiliary Air Force was established in 1939 as a semi-independent wing of the RAF. It was established in a series of reforms taken up by Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Britain, to combat the ever-increasingly challenging landscape of the war. One of the most important reforms taken up by Winston Churchill was the establishment of the Special Operations Executive, or the S.O.E. The S.O.E. was established to combat German forces in unconventional and non-traditional manner through various means like sabotage and espionage. And due to the circumstances of the war, the S.O.E. recruitment pool was open not just to women but also other nationalities of allied nations, which allowed greater operational capabilities for the S.O.E., but greater potential for danger and mistakes. But before we get back to Noor's story, what is a wireless operator? One of the most important aspects of war is communication. The means of communicating during a war needs to be secure, while the contents being communicated needs to be a secret. One of the relatively new ways of communicating back in the 1940s was through radio technology. In the early 20th century, radio technology was at its infancy, but it was relatively adopted by modern militaries of the world who saw the potential in the technology. However, the limitations of radio technology was still present, and it didn't make anybody's job any easier. Back then, radio equipment had very short range, which required a consistent line of radio stations to be constantly broadcasting weaker signals to greater distances. Another limitation was that early radio equipment used vacuum tubes to work, which made even the simplest radio equipment extremely large and hard to conceal. and for someone to operate a radio broadcasting station, it required these bulky, almost unconcealable equipment to be actively broadcasting new messages in a long line of communication. Therefore, the job description for a wireless operator is someone who operates these bulky and difficult radio stations to establish a secure and a secret communication line. And since the objective of the S.O.E. required communications to be established behind enemy lines, the use of wireless operators was a must. After joining the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, Noor felt that she could do more and applied to be transferred, which led her to the steps of the S.O.E. Noor's new position was to work right under the direct command of Vera Atkins, the principal assistant to the main director of the S.O.E., as an undercover wireless operator. And because of Noor's ability to communicate in French, she was assigned to the F section of the S.O.E. During her training, Noor learned the arts of being, in all manners, a spy. She learned how to shoot guns, how to operate in enemy territory, even know how to handle herself in a mock interrogation by the Gestapo. After she was done with her training, Noor secretly parachuted into German-occupied France while flying a fixed-wing plane called the Lysander. And with the codename Madeleine, Noor was ready to start her first mission. Noor's main objective was to join the French resistance group called the Prosper Network and establish a communication link between them and the S.O.E. Even so, that was the main objective. The difficulty of Noor's mission could not be overstated enough. Due to heavy equipment that needed to be concealed and the Gestapo working overtime by using detection fans to hone in on signals being broadcasted by other S.O.E. agents, most wireless operators deployed in this capacity had a life expectancy of just 6 weeks. However, Noor was chosen for this role because female agents were more successful at going through German security checkpoints than male agents, but this understates the apparent difficulty of this type of mission, especially for female wireless operators. Because of the gender bias faced by women agents in the S.O.E. that saw them as weak and incapable of doing difficult tasks, their job was mostly relegated to a traditional role of a carrier instead of a saboteur or resistance organizer, which ironically made the job for female wireless operators even more difficult than male wireless operators. Carriers didn't always have to communicate using radio equipment, but sometimes had to communicate through written and verbal messages, which increased the visibility and in turn increased the chances of being caught. But Noor was one of the best and was able to successfully evade and operate in German-occupied France for more than 4 months, which made her a valuable asset to the S.O.E. In those 4 months, the Gestapo under the direction of German intelligence had been closing in on the Prosper Network and its members. Moreover, the Gestapo would use captured equipment and credentials of S.O.E. agents to masquerade as them and pass along misinformation to sabotage S.O.E. operations. The increased activity of the Gestapo made operating in France even more dangerous than before. However, for Noor, it was assigned to do more so that the war could be over for good. But Noor's confidence was not shared by all in the S.O.E., especially the principal assistant, Vera Atkins, who wanted to pull Noor out of France because of the increased risk. But Noor insisted on staying as she believed she was the only genuine wireless operator in France. In October of 1943, Noor's position was discovered and she was captured by the Gestapo. During her capture, Noor was repeatedly tortured and interrogated, but she never once spoke or revealed any information. Moreover, she also attempted 2 prison escapes, which led her to be put in solitary confinement. But her repeated prison escapes made the German authorities label Noor as a high-risk inmate, which led her to be transferred to the Dachau concentration camp. In this concentration camp, and a month after her capture, Noor and her 3 colleagues were executed by German soldiers in cold blood. Noor's unfortunate capture is widely attributed to treason inside the S.O.E. One of the most prevailing theories is that of jealousy. It is believed that a supervising agent's sister, Renee Gary, supposedly had feelings for an S.O.E. agent named France Etelme. But Renee believed France loved Noor. Therefore, Renee allegedly got paid 100,000 francs by German agents to give information revealing the identity and whereabouts of Noor. Another prevailing theory is that of Henri Dericourt, a French agent that worked very closely with the Prosper Network and allegedly was a double agent working for Germany, and it is also suspected that he might have sold out Noor. It is also suspected that he might have worked as a triple agent with the SIS, now commonly known as MI6, to sell out the Prosper network and keep the Germans in the dark about D-Day. Not much is known as she was discovered by the Gestapo, but it's believed that Noor was one of the most crucial wireless operators during the entire war, and for that Noor was awarded the George Cross, the second highest award in Britain for bravery, as well as the French Croix de Guerre with the Silver Star. In 2012, a statue commemorating Noor was unveiled in the United Kingdom, which was the first standalone memorial of an Asian woman in the UK's history. During this ceremony, an old colleague of Noor, Irene Warner, remembers Noor and said she was a very quiet, very shy, and often wore a nervous smile, particularly when dancing, and she was a very nice person. She was brave and certainly deserves some recognition.